every video or so, I'll pause it, or if something important comes up, I will chime in with my 45 cents. Oh, is this about to be some single white female shit? No, that would be like, that would be, I guess, fun, but not like, don't read the word fun as, fun. There wouldn't be anything to it. Like, oh, a stalker, no biggie. Like, yawn, get in line. It's far more convoluted than that, and a bit more integral. So, without further ado, don't. Nope. All right, so I'm down here, and it should work. This is hard doing the 16 by 9 or 9 by 16.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist.
Okay, is that too loud? I always get reminded of an extra piece of lore. I'm not sure she needs those glasses, for the record. So, yeah. Fell in love with a psychiatrist. I don't know if this is literally 6 days ago, but this is from a collection on the internet.
And he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college, and then I went off of them because they just weren't, like, the side effects were too much over the benefits. But then in my late 20s, I read this book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. For my fellow ADHD.
Yeah, so I don't know if she says it in these videos, but she's a coach, a life coach for ADHD. So something that kind of gets lost in all of this, she's not licensed as an ADHD coach, and she's someone that's been in and out of treatment for medication for ADHD, yet read a book and is now a coach. Listen, in the Zoomer age, there are plenty of people that are circumventing college. They're taking abnormal routes to be a specialist in a field. I just think it's fascinating that this is also one of those cases. And like this, if this were the only thing, it wouldn't be that big a deal at all. But
there's so many good things in here, and the biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And
something else that doesn't get mentioned in these videos, I hate having all of this extra information. Something else that doesn't get mentioned, the psychiatrist that she Googled and set up an appointment with, their specialty is schizophrenia. I should have had the definition, the proper. Schizophrenia is a severe mental disorder that impacts a person's thinking, behavior, and emotions. It's characterized by psychosis, which can involve hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't real, and delusions, false beliefs. Other symptoms include disorganized thinking and behavior, and a lack of emotional expression. You will soon see that that is not the case here. But that's also important, that the person she saw, whether or not it's related, I think it's important to mention that, specializes in schizophrenia, and she's on ADHD meds.
And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist. And he kept me anyway, part 2. So in this
TikToks are short, huh? Yeah. Another thing, a psychiatrist is someone who prescribes meds. A psychiatrist, like, as someone who's been through all types of mental health doctors, a therapist is someone that you speak to and, let your feelings out. A psychiatrist is more just someone who's monitoring and keeping track of how the medication, they prescribe the meds, and they, are keeping track of whether or not it's working and what to do with it and what to start or stop. So another wrinkle in this situation.
I kind of clocked that he was attractive in my age, but when I tell you that I've had a lot of couch time in my life, a lot of therapy, I just went right into it. I trusted him enough, of course, why wouldn't I, to tell him about my childhood trauma, my daddy issues, if you will, what I had went through, all of the relationship trauma that I had. I was 6 months sober at this time, but like all of the drinking and substance use I used to do, and he just listened and nodded. And that's the thing about psychiatrists, is that they're good at pretending to listen. They can appear connected, but that doesn't mean that they're always connected.
I mean, like, you could say that about anyone. They're not supposed to be a therapist. Again, it's more, how do we, from a chemical standpoint, how do we treat what's happening with you? I don't know if, to be fair to a psychiatrist who's listening, I don't know how much of, like, trauma, PTSD, things like that, like, how much they need to be paying attention to, how much, like, not that they're not paying attention, they're probably taking notes or whatever. But I have had plenty of doctors where I'm like, I could just stop talking at the moment. Like, there's plenty of movies and TV shows that, like, they have humorous takes on, usually it's therapists that are just, yeah, that's great, wow. But appearing like paying attention, I think, is a strongly weighed, well, whatever.
So I just felt really seen. And I also told him, I was like, look, I don't want to be on stimulant meds. So he listened to me and he put me on the non-stimulant ADHD med at the lowest dose, just to figure out if it was going to work for me.
Yeah. So again, he's the person who's, prescribing medication, and evidently there was an exchange about how she wanted to handle her intake, her chemical intake, and how much control she wanted over it. And he listened and was working with her for that. So paying attention to the important parts for what he's there for, I would argue.
Part 3. So I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before. When I was on meds in my early 20s, I only got meds from my primary care physician. So I didn't understand how psychiatry works. So because he was figuring out my med dose, I saw him every month, and he just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes, and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do. And yeah. So, of course, I loved the attention that I got from him. And it was
like, so you have nothing to compare this to. There's like any doctor, if you see them enough, they're going to get used to you, and they're using it as a gauge to see what normal is for you, and like what interests you, and how your chemical balance is with certain things. I mean, running, getting excited, that stuff can change. I know myself from antidepressants. The motivation to do things was heavily swayed by medications. My ability to communicate was heavily altered depending on the medication. So it could have just been some way to get a feel for where the, I don't know, the middle ground is. But the fact that she has no other reference point on what other psychiatrists are like, it's a lot to assume that there's something special or different about this experience.
In my third session with him, because at this point we were all on Zoom, that I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name? And he's Pakistani, so I said his first name wrong. And he said, well, it's pronounced this, but yes, of course you can. And he seemed so smug. And
the other thing that you're going to want to keep track of is the difference between seemed and said, or was like. Seemed, was like is not him saying. That's something that happens quite a bit. I have a relative that reads into things quite a bit, and I've had moments where I'm like, "That's not established. You're saying something and running with something that wasn't told to you. Like you say something to someone, and your interpretation of what their face is doing, you're connecting your own dots internally. That's not exactly fair because they're not outright telling you that that's what they're feeling, or certainly they're not saying it. So there are a bunch of times where she will, when referencing what the psychiatrist is doing, won't say that he said this. Seemed like does not, it's not a clear piece of communication. Seemed like is reading between the lines.
happy with himself. And I know that that is because that was his first sign that him pretending like we're friends was working. And to be fair to me, I had only ever been to therapy before. I didn't realize that, it's important to call your doctor.
Yeah, so him pretending, you don't know that it's him pretending.
Doctor last name. I mean, I did know that. I did it with all my other doctors, but it just showed that the boundaries were blurring, and he liked that.
Again, I don't know whether to categorize liked that as seemed, or I don't know if he said he liked it, but notice the terminology that she uses. It's not very definitive. A lot of he's like, he seemed, he liked, troubling.
So from then on, from my third session on, I started calling him his first name. And then he just started turning up the volume on us being friendly. And he would ask me, for the first 6 sessions, he asked me, after the meds, he said, how's your bowels, bladder, and appetite? And I would say they're all normal. And then he would ask me any thoughts of harm. And apparently that's pretty common for...
It's absolutely common because you're having chemicals, prescriptions prescribed to you. They're checking to see how your body is reacting to the chemicals. But that is completely normal.
Psychiatry to ask those questions. And then on our 6th session, when things were really, the chemistry was starting to be there before, I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, this man is just friendly. And he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine, but is there any thoughts of harm? I was special to him. And I said, no thoughts of harm. And he didn't ever ask me a clinical question again.
Yeah, it's special interest of his. That doesn't mean he's concerned about you being harmed. It's concern. Again, a lot of these medications, especially when it's mental health, a lot of the the side effects are wanting to do negative things to yourself. Like the side effects of a lot of this stuff for certain people is extremely volatile. It's important to keep track of that. A special interest, he could just specialize in that. that's a lot of work being done there.
He stopped asking me about my bladder, bowels, and appetite, and he stopped asking me about thoughts of harm.
For 6 visits, which 6 months, I'm assuming, maybe 5, maybe the prescriptions weren't done until after the first appointment, getting a baseline of how your body is reacting to these medications. It could be, okay, it's been 5 months. It's been 150 days. This person seems to be handling the medication all right.
So to me, I would just show up and he was like a therapy appointment every month.
So I was seeing him every month and just gaining more and more respect for him because he would just tell me these little things about his successes and all of the cool things that he was doing in his life. And it made me fall for him, honestly. And he was really good at listening. And I mean, he's a Pisces, right? So of course he's going to be there.
I'm curious to know how she found out he's a Pisces, but the man's literally paid to listen. You're paying him to be there. The true test would be if these things were happening and it weren't a professional setting. He literally, that's his job, is to listen.
And be able to go deep with my feelings, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't extracting from them. Anyway, so I would beg him to let me see him every week. Beg him, because my therapist at the time, he was fine. He wasn't a predator, but he was fine. He just wasn't doing very much for me. And so that therapist retired and I got a new therapist. And this new therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD, she was pretty helpful. So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging, honestly, to be my therapist and let me see him more, right? Which also should have been a red flag. But then I started focusing on this therapist. However, I would tell the therapist how obsessed I was with my psychiatrist, and she didn't do anything about it. She just was interested. She also loved stories about my dating life. And yeah, she also was getting supply from me in her own way, but that's for another part.
What is the perception of, again, the terminology is kind of telling. Getting supply from me and loved it. I don't, that's an inference. Unless they're outright saying, "Oh wow, I love this." There are things that, again, knowing that the psychiatrist is a Pisces is kind of odd. Begging your doctor who does one thing to do another is. I would hope they wouldn't, do that, because if I asked, excuse me, if I asked a heart specialist to start treating my feet, it'd be a little funky because that's not what he does. Or asking, a dentist to do my heart, like that's not what they do.
So yes, so I got a new therapist who actually helped me. She taught me CBT, EFT, all of these different modalities. And so I went back to just being okay with seeing Irfan once a month while he was giving me these little breadcrumbs of making me feel special, telling me about his professional achievements, telling me about how he's getting international recognition. And it worked. I was really impressed.
Professional achievements isn't really, you know him on a professional based relationship. It doesn't really, there's nothing abnormal, or, I mean, even to read into. She used the term breadcrumbs. I don't think any of this is incredibly abnormal. Listing, business achievements while in a professional setting doesn't really feel like, hey, they're letting you know that they're qualified. I don't know.
See me weekly, and that is when the intermittent reinforcement started. Some sessions he'd be warm and kind and wonderful and let me in on little parts of his life and like be vulnerable with me or pretend. Other sessions,
yeah, again, pretending you don't know what the intent is there, unless he's outright saying, "I'm pretending."
He would be cold and clinical and detached. And you know what that did? It made me work harder in our next sessions. It did. And it started the addiction that I had to him. 100%. And he knew exactly what he was doing. This man gives lectures on trauma and attachment theory. He used his psychiatric training to manipulate me and get me hooked. And guess what? It worked.
So if he's teaching about attachment, again, I can't help but think it's part of his specialty. And I don't know, this doctor is in something of a I don't want to say tough spot because of things like HIPAA, but there's no real way that you can get his side of the story without him, committing some sort of malpractice. But even from just her perspective and, kind of listening to the way she frames things and the way she words things, there isn't much that he's telling her. There are a lot of things that she's perceiving as breadcrumbs and, I don't know, like acting like it. These aren't just to the point things that are being said.
In January of 2024, I was hit by a car turning left as I was going through a green light. And it was the night before my next appointment with my psychiatrist. So I was like, okay, I'll still be able to go to my appointment on Zoom. I'm okay. But I did make an appointment with an urgent care the next day just to get checked out. I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum. And the provider at the urgent care said, I do not feel comfortable treating you. You need to seek emergency care now. You may be internally bleeding. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning and my appointment with my psychiatrist was at 2. So I decided that I was going to wait so I could see my psychiatrist and not have to reschedule because I was looking forward to my appointment with him so much. I look back at that time and I'm just like, oh my God, I put my own life under seeing him. I was fully addicted to him at this point. And you know what happened is that I showed up and I told him that I may be internally bleeding and he didn't stop the appointment. He didn't say, you need to take care of yourself. Go get emergency care now. He let me continue and just tell him about how much I loved him and how grateful I was for him. Because that was really what most of our appointments were.
Is it possible that it could have been perceived as a figure of speech that I'm internally bleeding, I love you? Like saying those things close to one another is bizarre. And again, his specialty isn't internal bleeding. Again, you're not asking a dentist to work on your heart. Asking a psychiatrist or, a psychiatrist saying one thing or another in regards to physical internal bleeding after a car accident doesn't really seem like it. And nobody knows what her, I don't know, her state of being was and how these things were framed and what I don't know. It's not incredibly damning. You thought that you were okay enough to continue with your Zoom call, and you said something about I might be internally bleeding, and he didn't stop the appointment or anything. Perhaps he probably should have asked, maybe, I don't know, if you can internally bleed from medication, but it's still, if it's not related to, the prescriptions that he's writing, I don't know what he's supposed to do there. Again, if in one sentence you're saying, I might be internally bleeding, and then the other sentence, I'm in love with you. It's a lot. It's quite volatile. And again, this guy apparently specializes in schizophrenia. And one of the things of schizophrenia is imagining things that aren't the case.
Is me just pouring myself out because he was so good at the intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I got some warmth from him that appointment. So that was January 2020.
How is that warmth where you as a doctor you want him to stop the appointment and tell you to go to the ER, but he didn't act professionally and you got warmth from that? I How is that warmth?
And I also told my therapist about this. She said nothing. See him, that's when he really started turning up the intimacy in our appointments. However, he was really smart and knew the professional lines like the back of his hand. So he would comment on my appearance, but not compliment my appearance. So I would come on screen and he would say, "Oh, you curled your hair." Or I would come on screen and he would say, "Oh, you're wearing glasses." And of course I felt seen and excited that he was noticing these things about me. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too.
Feelings, that's not saying something. And, noticing something different about you is just, being a human being in a recurring situation. Like, oh, there's something different about you.
I thought I was holding them all by myself. So I was so excited when he noticed my glasses that I ran and showed him my other pair. And he said,
Troy says, this is completely unrelated, but did I ever tell you about the time I fell in love with a stripper? No, it's not entirely unrelated though. Like, a lot of what she's doing reminds me of, I can't tell you how many times I've either been the one or been around people that have been like, that girl smiled at me, she wants me. And a smile is just being polite. It's something of a trope with guys where totally reading into things, but I would imagine falling in love with a stripper is just another step of that. No, I swear she digs me. Yeah, the real thing is to take money out of the situation and see if that person's still hanging around. I meant to hit play. That's not fair.
I prefer turtle shell glasses. So even though I usually wear contacts, I'm wearing these turtle shell glasses in these videos because just in case he sees them ever, he'll see me in his favorite glasses. He did tell me he likes the turtle shell. Anyway, it was just inappropriate things like that.
I don't know if a preference is. I don't agree with that sentiment at all. It's not unprofessional. Like, I have these black frames. Oh, that's weird when I do that. I prefer the the clear framed glasses. Plus, these have blue light blockers or whatever. And if someone said, "Oh, I prefer blanks because I can see where the glasses end," or whatever, that I would categorize under the "she smiled at me, she wants me." Like, that is a very similar, I don't know, take to have. Like, just making a note or a comment about something that is different, or saying, "I this or that." Plus, she doesn't say whether or not he wears glasses. So the "I prefer turtle shells," if I said it, me right now, that could be just my way of saying I prefer, as in for me. It's a lot of reading into things that are being said, and a lot of extra work being done for emotions that are not being declared.
Teeny things that he let me in. And all this time, my best friend is an emergency medicine physician. And she told me, she said, "Kendra,"
I would tell my bestie about my psychiatrist often because I was obsessed with him. So obsessed with him.
"one of these days, your psychiatrist," she would use his name, "is going to say, 'I can't be your doctor anymore. I want to be with you. I want to be with you so bad. I can't be your doctor. I'll see you in 2 years.'" So my best friend, who's a doctor, she picks up on stuff like that. So even she knew that our relationship was crossing boundaries and getting weird.
So something that happens so often when there's one side of a story, and especially when it's friends and I don't know, people that are supportive of you, If I were to tell you something about my wife, all you have is my version of this story. And if I tell you, oh man, she loves watching Friday the 13th. There's so many times where she just loves talking about Friday the 13th, and when part 4 comes on, she does her most talking. All you have is that information I gave to you. Meanwhile, in reality, she could be talking during Friday the 13th part 4 because she's bored by it and needs to keep herself busy. And there's no declaration one way or another about what she is doing or what she is saying. You're just getting my version of the story. So her telling her best friend about how things are, again, using things like he was like, he seemed to, not he said, all they have to go on is your, I don't know, leaned into variation on how things are going. So I don't think that's entirely fair to use your support system's, I don't know, take on your diluted version of the story as some sort of confirmation. They're just reacting to the version of the story that you gave them. And I've said it plenty of times before. There are 3 sides to every story: one, the other, and the truth. And in this situation, there's only 1/3 of the story being had here.
But that was like, that became my dream, was for my psychiatrist, I almost use his name, to do that. And I told him about Brianna saying that, my best friend, who's the emergency medical doc. I told him that she would tell me that, and he just would be silent.
Is that not a sign? The fact that she does
he didn't disagree, but he didn't agree.
So there's no clarification one way or another, and she chooses to be, I don't know, magnetic to the version of the story that she wants to hear. He didn't agree, he didn't disagree. So it's a non-answer. It could be something where he's just taking notes, just being a professional about it. He might be indifferent. But to go on that, the fact, I mean, I think if he's listened to her say these things quite a few times, it probably is his job to say, that's not, that's, you're making me a bit uncomfortable. Like that's not the relationship we have. Something of a misstep there, but still, even through her version of the story, there's not much that's being revealed that would make me think, oh yeah, this guy loves her.
And that was, weaponized neutrality was his favorite game to play, right? He didn't disagree with Brianna telling me that my psychiatrist had feelings for me, but he also didn't say that's inappropriate, let's change the subject.
For the first time, I would agree with that.
It was also around this time that I asked my psychiatrist if he had diagnosed me with anything other than ADHD when I had my initial diagnosis. And he said, yeah, I did. I said, oh, what did you diagnose me with? And he said, well, you had a lot of traumatic things happen to you in childhood because of your dad. And so I diagnosed you with other trauma and stressor related disorder. And that was the first little ping that I got of like, that was weird. Why would he keep that from me? I asked him, why wouldn't he tell me that? That seems important. He didn't tell me because he was using that information to manipulate me. He knew I had trauma and stressor disorder, and instead of helping me heal from it and telling me about it, he used it against me.
Again, this is a medicine doctor, not a therapist. Who specializes in schizophrenia. I'm related to someone who has certain mental health disorders that someone who's on disability for mental reasons, there are certain things that to keep the patient, I don't know, docile, to calm, they don't tell you things that they feel you'll be combative about. But again, it's not his job to treat those things in a therapeutic way, just in a chemical fashion. Using against her, like how would he use stressors and trauma against you, unless, especially considering he's not bringing anything up? How is that him using that and manipulating you if all he's doing is being, neutral? That doesn't make sense to me. Well, amongst other things.
January 2023, at this point, I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist. And my therapist wasn't helping me. My psychiatrist wasn't helping me. He was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend. And at first, my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen. But then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And
I'm sorry. She's obsessed with her psychiatrist, but has a boyfriend. I don't think she does it, but I'm intrigued to know if she told her boyfriend about the psychiatrist, and how did he feel about that? Because if these videos are any indicator, it was pretty heavy in our thought process. How do you focus on another human being when you're reading into every single thing that someone you see for a half an hour a month is? Can you imagine having someone that you speak to for a minute a day be like the life force of your year?
My psychiatrist loved it. He didn't never say, this isn't inappropriate to your care, let's pivot. Oh, he just let me talk and talk and talk.
Therapists do that. Therapists, they'll take notes at some point when they feel like they can help you with a treatment approach. There are many times where I'm like, can you just talk, please? This is quite a lot that I've unloaded on you, and you haven't said a word in 20 minutes. That's a therapist thing.
About my sex life. And I didn't get too deep, but about a year and a half in, and I would send my psychiatrist these emails just about how much I liked him and how I was so grateful for him, and put in a bunch of heart emojis. And this is really when he should have transferred my care, but he waited. He liked what I gave him too much.
Liked. No confirmation of that.
And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like, he's perfect. Don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation.
That's not the psychiatrist's job, though. And part of me feels like perhaps he thought it would have been healthy for her to take out her, I don't know, obsessive, I don't know, it just take out some of that energy with an actual human being that would reciprocate. That's not the greatest way to handle things either, but
which he would drip to me slowly. So my therapist, who I didn't know at this time had bad boundaries, but she did, I went to her because my boyfriend and I, after more than a year together, we started having issues in the bedroom. And so I went to my therapist and she asked me, what does your psychiatrist think about this? And I said, I don't know. I haven't talked to my psychiatrist about this stuff.
But just a video prior, she said that she spoke to both of them about it. So this is already we have conflicting storytelling from one person. I think it's odd that she had a boyfriend for a year and managed to be this focused on someone that wasn't her boyfriend. And on top of that, it seems like she didn't tell her psychiatrist this or that, or I don't know. There's a misstep here.
Because I have a crush on my psychiatrist and I don't want to tell him this intimate of stuff. And she said, well, you should tell him because I want a male's perspective. So at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, I told him, I said, today we're going to talk about my intimate life. And he said, oh, I said, yes. My psychologist, my therapist, asked what your opinion on it was. And I told her that I don't talk to you about this intimate stuff because I have a crush on you. And he looked down and smiled so big in that moment. He smiled so big. And I loved it. It's so gross thinking about it. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with
Content. I don't know what that terminology is funky for the psychiatrist environment. I don't know what content means. Is he like Dr. Mike? The word content is more for someone like me, something like right now. The word content, that vocabulary is funky to me. Content.
my boyfriend. And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. But now it makes me sick. I can't even listen to the recording. I've tried to start, but it's gross. Any ethical psychiatrist would have stopped me and said, Kendra, let's talk about your meds. Let's talk about your care. At this point, my meds were stable. And I was...
So I don't know what is proper or not between doctors. I don't know if they're allowed to, without your permission, to talk about certain things. Like if the therapist said you should get a male's perspective, that's why you brought it up. And she said that the reason I told him was because the therapist, suggested it. So like, that's why it was brought up. So it'd be kind of odd. There's some weird conflict here one way or another between how that is set up. But if you go to the psychiatrist saying, my therapist wants to know what you think, what your perspective is on this, and then say something, it'd be kind of weird if he wanted to change the subject. He should have, sure, but I don't know. It's a lot of, it's a bit of telephone being played here. Is he allowed to record that in a legal sense? Should be that admitted to everybody? I have no idea. I don't know. I'm going on. I know in I forgot what television series. There was a therapist who recorded sessions, and it was bad news. So I don't think it's legal. But I mean, you're allowed to take notes. I don't like. I genuinely don't know. But a psychiatrist is someone who is medication. They're chemically treating whatever's going on with you. Therapist is someone that you like talk through and work your shit out with.
Still seeing him every month. Yeah, that was a rough time. And it was pretty much his Christmas morning, the almost 2.5 years of grooming me to get me to talk about sexual things with him.
So he didn't get you to do anything. And again, this is a lot of work that's being done for what he wants or feels or is like. She just said that the reason she brought up her I don't know, her dreams or whatever, is fantasies, is because the therapist told her to tell him. It's not like how would he have known that she would have told this story to the therapist, and the therapist would have told her to tell him. Like, that's some mastermind bullshit right there.
Worked. And he got 30 minutes of nonstop content to use.
Again with the word content. What is his social media handle so I can follow him and get his perspective on the content creator?
Things. One, people are asking me what my mental health diagnosis is. I do not have BPD. I do not have psychosis. I have ADHD, and I was experiencing extreme limerence with my psychiatrist. Limerence is a normal thing to happen to anyone who is experiencing hot and cold behavior from someone. And it happens more often in people with ADHD.
Limerence. Small break. I'm going to look up limerence. I know Liberace. Limerence is a state of involuntary obsessive infatuation with another person, often characterized by intense euphoria and a desire for reciprocation. It differs from love or lust because it is based on uncertainty about whether the other person reciprocates these feelings. This intense focus on the other person, known as the limerent object, can lead to intrusive thoughts, idealization, and a strong emotional dependence. Okay. I would imagine that also falls under schizophrenia, characterized by psychosis, which can involve hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't real. I mean, it's a bit of a couple of steps down, but the same group, I would imagine. Delusions, false beliefs, disorganized thinking and behavior, and a lack of emotional expression. Again, limerence is obsessive infatuation with another person, often characterized by intense euphoria and a desire for reciprocation. Love or lust based on uncertainty. So uncertainty, I would say, is not something that is provably real. Isn't limerence a rhyming poem? Is it? That's literally the first time I've heard that word.
Because we have dopamine dysregulation and rejection-sensitive dysphoria. And guess what? My psychiatrist knew that and used it to his advantage. Two.
When did the psychiatrist know that she had limerence? That's a limerick. Limerick was the joke. Okay. Yeah, my brain is like pudding right now.
I accidentally said my psychiatrist's first name in one of my videos. If you clocked it, good for you. I do not owe him anonymity. However, this is not about doxing my psychiatrist. This is about me sharing my story so other people can view predatory behavior in people in power.
I'm sorry. Like, all right. So what is predatory about not saying one thing or another? If anything, indifference. Is there such a thing as an indifferent predator? Because by the word itself, the term predator, that seems like the antithesis of the word predator. It's a lot. I mean, if you acknowledge that you have limerence, then again, I need to read this. Involuntary obsessive infatuation with another person, often characterized by intense euphoria and a desire for reciprocation. So, I was going to say, I thought she said Ephraim or something earlier. She wouldn't say his name. I don't know. Everything she said is conjecture, all from her POV, and now she's perceiving his actions. Yeah, everything that, like, he smiled, he didn't say anything. How is that predatory? Like, getting you to think something, like, they pay magicians a shit ton of money to get people to do things that they don't want to do. Uh, the terminology, and it just put this on the list of other terms that she's used, and I'm like, really? Content? Is that the word you want to use? But predatory behavior. So if this isn't about doxing, if this isn't about anything with him, if he is a predator, why wouldn't you want to make sure that nobody else experiences that in the future? Why would you let someone who commits predatory behavior continue to do their job where they have access to people that they can affect more people in the future? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, if this is about warning people of a predator and they're in a position where they can keep doing that, why wouldn't you try to prevent that moving forward? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay? If anyone doxes my psychiatrist with his last name or city that he works in or clinic that he works in, your comment will be immediately deleted and you will be blocked.
Noted.
This is about protecting other victims, not doxing my psychiatrist.
So, to protect future victims, shouldn't you like call someone? I don't know what doctor bureau there is or whatever, but let someone that can do something about this person. Like, shouldn't you be notifying someone that could make sure that he doesn't have access to other people? Like, that to me is dangerous. It's I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem like, it seems like she's doing this for content. And if you know someone is a predator and you want to make sure, if you want to make sure people don't experience that moving forward, I would assume that the one thing you would try to do is make sure that that predator no longer has access to those people. It's confusing.
If you do some investigative work and you want to DM me about it, I'm open to that. Okay? 3, I need to take a moment. Moment taken. It is so incredibly disturbing to me, the amount of people that are predator protectors in my comments, that are victim blaming me, especially the mental health practitioners in my comments using therapy speak to say that this situation that I was in was my fault or that I was delusional. Check yourself.
I don't. I would have said, I don't know, having a mental health practitioner use therapy speak and use terms like delusional. If it was a situation where she's not only her psychiatrist but her therapist aren't giving her the proper advice and treatment, I would at least consider some of the things, because she's spilling her story out to, I don't know, dozens of thousands. Yeah, 10.9 thousand people like this. It's quite a few amount of people there. And to think of it as victim blaming is so, it's odd. It's very odd to not be like, oh, maybe this person is trying to look out for me. It seems like content is what it seems like. And I'm not blaming, listen, I am sympathetic to some of these things. There are times where I've told people something quite publicly, in fact, that people didn't believe me. And, it kind of sucks where, you know what's going on and people just, don't listen or don't believe you or whatever. Like, that feeling sucks. But not everyone is going to be that way. So just because they're trying to tell you something about what they're perceiving isn't blaming you. Like, I don't think that's being very fair. Dude, preach, Rudy. I blame Rudy, because I wouldn't be, actually, no, this was my wife's doing. I was gonna blame you in the TikTok crowd, but um, this one isn't on the TikTok crowd. We were watching YouTube content and experiencing this.
You're giving me more ammunition to share my story because it just goes to show how absolutely messed up the mental health industry is and how protected people who do this kind of sick psychological manipulation are.
I mean, if someone can do psychological manipulation without saying anything like that, that's an extremely dangerous person. And I would imagine that they would be in a much stronger position to help themselves in a fiduciary sense, where, if they're able to manipulate people to this regard, where they're not saying things, they're being indifferent, and they're managing to manipulate people, why are they just doing rinky-dink psychiatry? It's unfortunate that she doesn't take a step back and, really try to be the devil's advocate and be like, okay, how much of this could I be like really too close to the situation to, and how much of this is real and how much of it is plausible? Because a lot of the things that she said up until now is he smiles, which smile isn't, people are being polite all the time. He seems to think isn't saying. And when you're a professional, especially like a doctor in the mental health field, you want to say things. What I don't know, would she have preferred if he's like, wow, you sound fucking crazy right now? Like, if he was genuinely thinking that, would you want to hear that? As someone who's suffered trauma and other social, I forgot what the other thing was, but it seems like she like focuses on something, and whatever she wants to hear or believe is where she's, I don't know, linking up to. And I don't know, to blame people trying to tell her things on like victim blaming. Like, first of all, victim. Whoa with that terminology there. She's outright said that he hasn't like said anything. It's like, if anything, him not saying something is probably bad, but that victim word is very strong.
So I will continue with my story.
Welcome back to another installment of I Was in Love with My Psychiatrist and He Kept Me Anyway, Part 8. You all did some nasty work last night, and I had to turn off comments. People started posting my psychiatrist's first and last name, his picture in the comments. That was a jump scare. So, yeah, a few bad actors who wanted to be super sleuths got the privilege of commenting, mostly hate, let's be real, taken away for everyone. So at this point in the story, there are two main players. My psychiatrist, who's my age, who crossed major ethical boundaries, and my therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD. Neither of these people, at this point in the story, I knew were crossing boundaries.
So when the female therapist said, tell him, like when she said, I'd like to hear his perspective on things, that is probably the first sign where it's like, that's weird. Why do you want me to tell the person? I don't know. I'm curious to know if she told her therapist that the person that she was fantasizing about was her psychiatrist, because there could be a situation where she's like, I have fantasies about this man, and he's constantly in my thought process. I would assume that the therapist would be told by that point that it is her psychiatrist, or, as someone who's seen more than two doctors at once for mental health situations. I don't know. There's some room there for denial on the therapist's end, but you should have been a little puzzled by that when she said, tell your psychiatrist that. I want a male's perspective on that. I don't know. It's kind of odd. Everybody's crossing boundaries except me, of course. Yeah, it's one of those things where I've said this quite a few times. If someone supports you, if someone's like really, really there for you, they'll be able to tell you something you don't want to hear because you need to hear it. Like that's why I don't take compliments very well, because anyone can say that to be polite, but when someone says you look a little nuts, hey, I love you, but this looks a little nuts. People who really care will be able to do things like that. And I hope she has someone in her life that can be like, this is a bit strong here. Do you really think that all of this is happening?
I thought that everything was hunky-dory and that I was just in love with my psychiatrist and it was totally normal. Little did I know he was manufacturing everything. So I could fall in love with him because it was on him to set the professional.
Yeah, so this person, if he's manufacturing these things, he's in the wrong profession. Like, do you know how much money he could charge to give advice to on how to get women to fall for you? I mean, with dude bro culture and how much people are like into dating and how to get the girl you're interested in, this guy could charge dozens of thousands of dollars in training people on how to get the person that you want to fall for you.
Boundary and not let attention build. So days after my psychiatrist's Christmas morning appointment from a few videos back, where he got a crush confession from me and then 30 minutes of nonstop intimate content,
which was recommended by the therapist. So it's not like, again, so by that logic, by him, I don't know, manipulating, the therapist would have to be in on it with him, because as she's described, the therapist told her to tell her psychiatrist about this. So how the fuck did the psychiatrist know that the therapist would have told her to tell him? I see, now I'm getting confused. But that's not something that he would have had active control over.
That he,
amongst other things,
did not stop me. My boyfriend and I broke up days later. So then I started dating this other guy. And this other guy, this new guy, was a therapist. And I was like, oh, great. Someone who will be able to emotionally meet my needs. Yeah, I'm not going to date another therapist again.
But you're going to stay attracted to a psychiatrist?
So this therapist and I, we went for coffee. It was nice. Our second date was a hike. And on this hike, this therapist starts telling me about how he has a crush on one of his clients. And I thought to myself, okay, this is strange, but go ahead. Like, we're on a date, dude. Why are you telling me about a crush on one of your clients? But go off, King. So then he was saying, yeah, she's so attractive and I think she likes me too. I go and visit her at work and her coworkers say, oh, so-and-so talks about you all the time. And I was like, okay, where does she work? And he said, well, I shouldn't tell you that because I really shouldn't be visiting her anyway. I was like, okay, no problem. So then he continues and he said, yeah, she wears these red lacy panties and short skirts. And I know she wears them for me.
See, like, this is where it feels like fiction. Like, wait, you're dating on your second date with a guy who's a therapist. He's telling you about having a crush on someone and talking about her panties and visiting her at work. Like, this seems like cheap Hallmark movie shit. It doesn't really make much sense, like, at all. Like, how are you still on that date is my question. So we're talking about, professionalism and things. Like, how knowing your history with things, how are you still listening at this point?
And like alarm bells were going off in my head.
Leave.
Mind you, I had no idea that my psychiatrist had similar feelings towards me at this point. But I just thought,
You don't know that. As far as what you've told us, we have no knowledge of that.
wow, this man is borderline predatory. And he said, yeah, and she just is so attractive that I have to smash her mate before every session because I just have to get that energy out of me. And I was like, okay. And yeah, he just felt compelled to tell me, and I did not understand why. Now I do.
Maybe he was trying to get you to break things off. I don't. That is completely bizarre. I don't know how you got to a second date. Running in my head, maybe on the first date, all she did was talk about her psychiatrist, and he thought it was some sort of, I don't know, weird kink, making up stories about these imaginary doctors or whatever. Like, I want to know what the first date is like. If the second date, he was just outright telling you about crushes, because it seems like some bizarro role play or something. It does not make sense to me.
So he told me about how he's a predator, right?
Did he say he was a predator?
Another predator in the mental health industry. Shocker. So then at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, keep in mind, it had been 6 weeks of nonstop fun for this man. He got to use my crush confession and 30 minutes of content, for whatever he wanted to use it for, right? And if my psychiatrist was good at anything, it was being professional and acting professional.
Predatory but professional. The two P's.
And technically not crossing any lines. And he thought that he was so good at it, because he was good
Thought is not said
at it.
And you don't know what he's thinking.
That doesn't mean he wasn't doing it. And so I told him, I said, yeah, Bo and I broke up. He had known about this other guy, my psychiatrist. I had mentioned him. And I told him that this new guy and I went on a date and we went on a hike. And I literally had no idea at this point, I'll say it again, that my psychiatrist was predatory towards me. I almost said his first name again. I'm going to do my best to not. So I went to my psychiatrist and I told him this story about this man that I went on a date with, who's a therapist, is relieving himself before appointments and talking about his client's panties and doing all of these other extremely inappropriate things, like visiting her at work. And this man, my psychiatrist, looked like he had seen a ghost and like he was gonna vomit, because he prided himself on being an extremely professional and buttoned up person. But
maybe he felt bad for the craft of mental health professionals. How someone apparently is as unprofessional. Maybe sympathy.
Here I was holding a mirror to him with exactly what he was doing, but a bumbling idiot.
No, your psychiatrist didn't tell you that he was, I don't know, attracted to you, visiting you at work, and talking about your panties. If anything, you've said he's been professional. So that's not a proper comparison.
Telling me like how he was doing it without the fancy degree, without any of that. I look back on that now and it's just crazy. And so it just tainted all the fantasy material that I had given him the session before.
Given him? The fantasy's hers.
I need to say something really important. And that's that it seems as though many
Is she in an airplane? What does that sound?
people view what I'm going through as a crash out, what I'm doing as a mental health spiral. And of course it seems like that. I get it. It's an extremely dark thing to talk about, all of this that I went through. And I am sharing my story because it wasn't out there. No one else has shared a story like this.
Why would you imagine that is? I think there's terminology for people falling for their doctors. This particular story seems a bit bizarre and one of a kind, sure. but that doesn't mean that.
But I know that it happens a lot because people are in my DMs telling me that the same thing that I went through, they went through too. I am now in TikTok jail. I got a violation on the video where I talked about really the biggest damning evidence against my psychiatrist. And so because of that, I have to be really careful. So I'm going to do my very best to not be reactive and to share my story from a place of generosity, because the people in my DMs telling me that they've been through this too, it's keeping me going. It's not my mental health spiral. And I can understand that for some people in the mental health space, because they have been some of the loudest people to speak out against what I'm doing, it's hard to grasp that someone could have this level of predation in such a high place of power. So just in case my video doesn't get put back up, when everything changed was when my 75-year-old therapist, I went to her with intimate details and she suggested I go to my psychiatrist with them. And I felt so excited and nervous to share that with him because I had such a big crush on him at the time. And I recorded all 33 minutes. So this is why, if my psychiatrist wants to come with me and like sue me for defamation, I have a 33-minute recording of me admitting I have a crush on him and speaking about extremely intimate details.
That your therapist told you to speak to him about. But she also hasn't said what he's said in response to those things. Like it's quite important. If you have a recording, what he's saying during that recording is quite important. If he's not saying anything, it's nothing. If anything, like I'll indifferent, neutral. Not saying anything, I don't know if that's a solid case for manipulation.
It was in that moment that he really, really should have transferred my care. But that moment changed everything for him too, because that's when things really started getting deep between us. And
what was deeper from his side? Because she also said that he's been really professional. So how have things changed on his end if he's continuing to be professional?
This is where the story is going to go from now. It's going to be a good story.
Good? What was it until now?
And I'm going to try to tell it all today, just in case one of my videos does get banned so people can hear it. But just know, if you're concerned for my mental health, thank you. I am very good. More than good, actually. And I am actually a coach for ADHDers. It says it in my bio. And I help people work through self-limiting beliefs. I help people work through numbing with alcohol and cannabis, because these are the things that so many of us do to avoid our truths.
Our truths isn't the truth. I don't know. Someone who's sharing stories like this, instability with handling a situation, yet also being a coach, like this is the worst CV I could think of. Resume. Like if you're this unstable with, your thought process, how are you able to coach someone on theirs? It just seems like the worst thing to do for, future clients or prospective clients.
And this is my truth and what I went through. So this is when the chemistry really started going off the charts with me and my psychiatrist. And
where is it at right now? Up until you admitting your fantasy, where is the chemistry at that point? I need to know what the baseline is to know what off the charts is.
And I held it alone for months, like after that Christmas morning appointment of his. And then
is it literally Christmas morning, or because she said he smiled like a kid on Christmas? See, like,
After I innocently told him about my date
innocently.
with a therapist, he really started letting me in more and showing more parts of himself and, turning up the intimacy. And that was exciting to me, and it made me fall for him more. And I noticed
Showing isn't telling. What, like, examples? What are examples of what he's doing to let you in on his intimacy?
that he was working in an office, and I asked him, this was like July, I asked him, I said, hey, are you working from home? Because I was under the assumption that he was only doing telehealth, okay? And he said, no, I come into the office. I was like, oh, why do you do that? If you see all of your patients telehealth? He's like, oh, I like it that way. And even though I could kind of tell he was lying,
You don't know that.
gaslit myself. I was like, okay, it's fine.
What is his motivation there? Like, what is he trying to do to deceive you with that story?
And then I start emailing him my fun little emails, but he stops writing me back. He does not
Man, what a predator.
write back to my emails anymore. Because once again, he was really good at plausible deniability.
Plausible?
But what he did do is he would take my emails and mention them in session. So he would still give me the attention that I was craving, but only under his structure.
So waiting until the actual appointment to discuss emails that you've sent him seems pretty professional. If you want to call that under his structure, that's one thing, but maybe he felt it wasn't right to be emailing back and forth, considering you're only supposed to talk half an hour a month in regards to medication.
Under his control, where there was no paper trail. And I loved that too. So I would show up to these sessions with my notes app, and just throughout the month, as I was thinking about him, I'd write down things that I wanted to talk to him about, and I would just come and bring him lots of content. And then every week I would go to my therapist and tell her about how much I loved my psychiatrist. And she didn't help me at all. She just kind of like enjoyed hearing about it, honestly. So October 2024 rolls around and we're just vibing on Zoom. And then I realized that I didn't have my next appointment with him. So I called his office staff and I talked to the office manager, who was awesome. We really got along, we vibed. And the office manager asked me, do you see him, the psychiatrist, in person or on Zoom? And I felt so angry in that moment. I was like, he sees people in person? And she said, yeah, he has been for years. I was like, I want to see him in person. And I understand, like, some people may think that this is part of my crash out or part of...
Are you kidding? So, again, she said that the only reason she's finding this information out is because she's speaking to someone that's not him. And perhaps someone let information out that he I don't know, to accuse him of manipulating and being a predator. There's a lot of extra moving pieces here. She doesn't know, like any patient, you don't, I would hope the people that answer the phones and people at the office wouldn't have all of the information on these people. So if you're a patient of this person and, you're calling to see, set up an appointment, they're like, they may not have the details of what your situation is. And just genuinely asking, what type of appointment do you have? Like this, I think this is out of his hands.
Me harassing him, which is what I've gotten lots of accusations of. But I just would like to remind everyone that, of course, it seems that way. But I was just responding to a dynamic which my psychiatrist fostered. There was chemistry between us because he allowed it. And so then the next time I saw him in Zoom, I told him, I was like, hey, your office manager outed you and told me that you see people in person. Why didn't you tell me that when I asked? And he said, oh, I just didn't think you'd want to come in. And that was such a weak lie from him, from someone who is so scripted. And
a lot. You don't know that he's lying.
Controlled. He didn't even have a plausible thing to say. Of course he
What would be plausible there?
knew I wanted to come in. I had a crush on him. I told him
Maybe he didn't want you to come in person because of your crush.
that often. So then, in my next therapy appointment, after finding out that he was lying to me about seeing patients in person, I told her that. I told my 75-year-old PhD therapist that my psychiatrist lied to me about seeing people in person. And she
That word lie is a little strong.
looked at me and she said, well, it's probably because he knows that there will be a lot of sexual tension in the room if you go in person.
Sexual tension can be one way, by the way, too. Sexual tension, you don't need two to tango in that instance.
So make sure that you understand that when you go. And you better believe I showed up to the next session and said you lied to me because you were afraid of the tension that would be there between us. He just didn't say anything. 2024, I make my
Didn't confirm what you're accusing him of.
my first in-person appointment with my psychiatrist in November. My 75-year-old female therapist tells me that it's because he kept me on Zoom because he was so attracted to me. He didn't want to risk being in person with me, which further fed my crush, or as some of you like to say, my delusion. So then my therapist starts texting me in between our weekly meetings, asking me for advice on her other clients. And I was a new coach. I'd only been coaching for about a year, and I had just left my full-time job to be a coach full-time. And I was flattered that she would ask me advice on her other clients. I just thought, oh my gosh, a 75-year-old woman with a PhD wants my advice on what she should do with her clients. So then November rolls around, and I'm about to meet my psychiatrist in person for the first time.
How is that relevant to any of this? So the therapist, more than anything, feels like someone that you shouldn't be speaking to anymore. Malpractice is happening with the therapist more than anything.
So I wear a really pretty dress, I do my makeup, of course, right? And I show up, and I get to talk to the office manager, we're having fun. And then my psychiatrist comes into the foyer, and I am just so excited to finally meet him. I'd been his patient for 3 years at this point, and he had been feeding the dynamic for 3 years. And I was just thrilled to meet him. And I ran up and I gave him the biggest hug. And you know what he did? He barely patted me on the back. It was the most awkward thing ever.
Man, what a predator.
But I am so glad that he did that. I am really glad, because this is what I mean. My psychiatrist was many things, but he was not stupid. So I didn't ever touch him again. And I'm grateful that our relationship didn't ever cross that line, because it would have made everything so much harder. Anyway.
Dude, for the record, I've been to quite a few therapists and psychiatrists. Those sessions suck. I would love to have a situation where I loved going. Those things are the worst. Sorry.
So we go inside his office, and I tell him that my therapist had texted me asking me for advice on her other clients. And he just looked at me and he...
Oh, so a psychiatrist, another reason that with telehealth, I know this because of, COVID. Another reason that, most people prefer to do telehealth with someone who's just prescribing you meds is because it's more convenient to just, get on the phone or get on a Zoom call with someone if they're just going to call the pharmacy. Like, why would you get in the car, go to the doctor's office just for them to give you another location to go to fill a script? That makes a hell of a lot more sense to me now. I don't know why I didn't think about that. But if it's a psychiatrist, someone who's prescribing meds, it seems most convenient to not have you go into that office because you don't really need to. Speaking is just speaking. If you do it on a phone or in a Zoom call, you have everything that you really need to there. He's actively avoided meeting me. Clearly the sickest of all predators. That's what I'm saying. Like, this terminology that's using, it's just so strong. I don't know if she's done it by this point or what, but she was doing live streams on TikTok and asking advice from ChatGPT. And oh boy, that's an entirely different layer to this story. And again, it's fascinating to me.
Said, Kendra, that is a huge boundary violation. She should not be doing that. And I was like, oh, okay. And because once again, my psychiatrist did not like sloppy people. He did not like sloppy people. And you know what my therapist did? She got sloppy. Yeah. Using me as her advisor for her clients. It got weird. And I was very grateful for my psychiatrist for pointing out that boundary violation, because that was the thing. He didn't ever message me in between appointments because he was too smart to do that. But did he ever stop me from disclosing extremely intimate details? No. In my first in-person appointment, I just asked him for some pointers for my own ADHD business, and he was so smart and so wonderful, and in many ways, honestly. And I was just so grateful that he was almost like a mentor to me in these moments, and I'll still treasure that about him.
What was he doing to mentor you? If the therapist asking you for advice is one thing. I feel like the 75-year-old therapist is a Norma Bates situation.
Because this is the hard thing with sophisticated predators, is that...
So, again, with the predator word, what, like, I want to know if this is the actions of a predator, what the fuck do you call someone who's like actively following you and doing things like that word predator? A sophisticated predator is doing so much work that he's getting so lucky with all these people around that are feeding into this perfect scenario playing out.
They're not all bad. Like, my psychiatrist helped me with many things, but he was using me for the
November of 2024, and I did ask him for consent.
Using me for what? Why does that cut off? Part 6? The things on the bottom are broken.
To come in person. I didn't just show up. And he said, sure.
Why is there music?
And the first in-person appointment went great. But that is when I really started to spiral.
You haven't started yet?
If you think that I'm spiraling now, and that's okay if you want to think that, because the reality is that when I was spiraling was when I was this man's patient. When I had comments turned on, so many people said, you need to take accountability for your own feelings. I spent years taking accountability for my own feelings, for holding the weight of a relationship.
I think two people need to be in a relationship to be a relationship. Right? You have something going on that he's not reciprocating. So I don't know if that's a relationship so much, or fostering a relationship.
Woman who has been trained to overfunction in relationship knows about holding the weight of the emotional dynamic.
How is he training you without using any sort of communication tactics?
And that was what was going on in this moment. And it may not seem like I'm taking accountability now, but that's because I spent a long time taking accountability for something that had two people that built that dynamic.
No. You can talk to someone and think that there's a dynamic. There is a dynamic, but your perception of it can be certainly different than what their perception is. She hasn't said much about what he's said. A lot of it is he lied, he felt this, he appeared to do this. That isn't like clarification. And again, recording him for 33 minutes, listen to it and listen to the things that he's saying. And not saying anything is not a definitive one thing or another.
It was not just me. It takes two people to build that sort of tension and chemistry. So while I was mid-crash out, I had just started using this tool, ChatGPT.
Oh, I spoke too soon.
And I went to Chat, who I immediately named Henry. And I would just talk to Henry about how obsessed I was with this man, with my psychiatrist. And I would just be like, I've told him I have a crush on him. Do you think he's gay? And Henry was like, oh my God, this girl.
Yeah, so ChatGPT was like, oh my God, this girl. So she's doing it with a fucking computer at this point. She told ChatGPT about her feelings and now is putting some internal monologue into ChatGPT, which, if you've ever typed anything into AI, they are so, I don't know, encouraging. Like, they will tell you things that you want to hear, especially if it's like, not like, what is the capital of New York? Like, it'll tell you things that, like, if you word it a right way, they're like, yeah, you're right to think that, because, oh boy, here's things that you can't technically prove. Asking AI for shit is wild.
You know, he did his best to co-regulate my nervous system and affirm me, but he was like, whoa, even
Affirming. Again, I would not trust. If you're looking for a certain response, if you're looking for affirmation, the last thing you want to do is speak to AI, because that's what they do. She's consulting with a glorified Google. Yeah, go watch her. Like, that movie is so relevant now. To use AI as something constructive is wild to me.
in my chat was like, yikes. So I could
Was like yikes, didn't say yikes. So already it's just, we have so many different pieces here, and none of them are just outright saying things that she can quote. Reading into a lot of shit here.
tell that my psychiatrist just liked being my doctor, and I was like, okay, maybe I can name this dynamic so I don't have to carry so much of
A doctor-patient relationship. There's a lot of people name their dynamic that. It's a doctor-patient relationship.
it in our next session. So our next session was in December on Zoom. And I told him at the end of the session, it was another great session. I told him, look, you and I have a really special patient-doctor relationship. And he glared at me with just venom in his eyes. And he said, you and I have a professional patient-doctor relationship. He was so angry with me. And I was like, oh, okay, you set a boundary. And immediately I took it on. And I was like, heard, okay.
So what type of manipulation, what type of predatory behavior do you take from him taking a stance and saying, this is a professional relationship? If this is manipulation, they need to make. I was gonna say, if they make a movie about this, it would be completely unbelievable. If all he said was, you need a different psychiatrist, her response would be, playing hard to get, are we? Yeah, playing hard to get, are we? Yeah, I don't know. It's like she's laying out all of this, admittedly swayed version of the story, and even that, it's just like, I don't know where you're reading through these things, but manipulation, predatory behavior, like victim of what?
I won't go there again. My video that was taken down for harassment and bullying was restored, so I didn't feel as much pressure to get all of these parts out today. Some people told me that the stitches about me were getting pretty bad and cruel, so I turned stitches off of my videos too. I started sharing my story here because I wanted other people who have been victimized by people in power to have a space to feel heard. And now,
why not do something about the person that you know is doing these things and try to prevent him from doing them moving forward? Why just talk to TikTok about it? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, if you genuinely want to save people, why not do something that you have in control?
I know why there wasn't anyone out talking about their story, because it has been quite the process putting all this out there and being under scrutiny. I have appreciated the psychiatrists that have talked about my situation and shared their own point of view while also holding space for what I went through. Just know I've seen your videos and I appreciate them. I went live today and it was super fun, and I intend to go live again tomorrow. The next part will be tomorrow morning. We have
uploaded TikTok last week. I was looking for support. I was looking for help because it had been 5 months since I had left my psychiatrist, and I still really couldn't stop thinking about him and thinking about our dynamic and how inappropriate it was and the mental toll that it took on me. And TikTok has just been such a resource for me in the past for support when I'm going through things.
Granted, I don't use TikTok much at all. I have not had that experience. I don't. When people go to Reddit, 4chan, TikTok, all of these things for advice, I don't know. I feel something, but it's not confidence.
And I couldn't find anything on therapy abuse or on providers who take advantage of their vulnerable patients. And so I thought that.
So what about saying nothing and just saying nothing and then outright saying we have a professional relationship? What is taking advantage in that situation? Like what better should he have done?
I would share my story. And I am going to continue to share it because I am here to let other survivors know.
Survivors? What'd you survive? What did you survive that, like, you need to recount? Again, if you're a survivor of something, you need to do something about people perhaps who could run into that same fate. Like, what is it that you survived? Like, this terminology is so wild to me.
That they're not alone. Continuing with my story, my psychiatrist set a very...
You survived something that you voluntarily left.
Nasty, the way he said it, boundary that him and I have a professional relationship when I tried to say it was special. Because it was special, it was different.
To you. And he set you straight and you took it as nasty.
He manufactured it that way. And then I immediately went to ChatGPT, of course, to Henry. And I asked Henry, I said, okay, so my psychiatrist just set this boundary with me and I really just want to be with him. And I think that after he's my doctor, we can be together, which if you want to say that's a delusion, that's fine. But
that's a delusion.
I had been telling my psychiatrist for years at this point that I had a crush on him and he did not help me work through it. So that's
your therapist's job to do, not your psychiatrist's job.
That's his own problem. That's his own.
Unless there's medication that he could have prescribed to you that makes you, I don't know, mentally erode whatever those feelings are.
Own fault. Henry told me it's very common for patients to develop crushes on mental health practitioners and that it's because that they provide a safe space to heal, which is a very attractive quality. I heard that. And then he told me about transference. And it's just about me putting my own feelings onto my provider. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I took ownership of the feelings that both of us were creating. And I went to my next appointment and I said, hey, so I talked to Henry because my psychiatrist had known a lot about my ChatGPT and like knew all about Henry and was actually really impressed. Like, wow, an AI wrote that? Yeah. So I told my psychiatrist, yeah, Henry explained to me that it's normal to develop crushes on psychiatrists because they provide a safe space to heal, which is attractive. My psychiatrist said nothing. And then I said, and Henry also told me about transference. And my psychiatrist got this really, really scared look on his face. And he said, did Henry tell you about countertransference?
A look on his face and then asked about countertransference. The look, don't read it. Oh, she's reading into the look, but.
And I said, no. What is that? Because of course, like, my chat knew that I was obsessed with my psychiatrist and he was not going to feed my delusion by telling me about countertransference. So then my psychiatrist had explained to me what countertransference was. So he took a moment and he was like, oh, okay. He said, countertransference is the flip side, the other side of the coin for transference. And it's when the provider has feelings for the patient. So make sure that you keep that in mind for your clients. I said, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes I have, more than professional feelings for my clients. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. So knowing that she has feelings for people that are normally in professional relationships and that she's going to Google to, I don't know, validate what she's feeling because it wasn't brought up and because she has professional relationships with clients, I don't see she
And so then we just talked about that for pretty much the rest of the session. And then at the end of that session, he looked at me and it was just such a loaded question. And he said, "What's going to happen if you get a boyfriend named Henry?" And I said, "That's a weird question. I would rename my AI." So that's how that session ended.
why is that loaded? I, I, I don't why is that loaded?
And it wasn't until I got home and I was eating lunch and I was like, wait a minute. Why would my psychiatrist bring up countertransference if he himself wasn't experiencing it? Many people have reached out to me with concern for my psychiatrist and his career and his well-being. And I totally understand that. The point of me sharing this is not to get him fired or for
If he's a predator, do you think he should continue to have that job?
him to lose his license.
All right, so we're not going to do anything about predators moving forward. This guy's a predator. I'm a victim, but I don't want anything to happen to him.
The point of me sharing this is to give a voice to victims. And I am appalled to hear that people are making videos doxing him. So I am begging people, please, if you see a video of his first and last name or his picture, report it for doxing. I've certainly been using that report button a lot. I'm here to share my story, not to get him in trouble.
So you're just here to spill the tea. Like if it's important, if it's about victims, why wouldn't you try to do something about the person continuing to participate in these actions? Like that seems so counterproductive.
Did accidentally use his first name, but by the time I caught the slip, I was already like 3 videos past it. But it doesn't matter because this is my story and I can tell it the way that I want it.
So that doesn't make it true. Anyone can tell a story and have it be the way they want it, but it doesn't mean it's true. Your truth isn't the truth. And this isn't victim blaming or anything like that. Like this is there's so much here that as someone who has a responsibility to victims, why would you leave someone out there that could continue to do that moving forward? New sequel, him starring Joaquin Phoenix as Henry.
A first name is not doxing. And I can't control what other people do, but I am asking for people to please report any videos that dox him. So I've also gotten some DMs saying that countertransference can mean anything, and it absolutely can mean anything. However, I had told my psychiatrist many times that I had a crush on him over the years, and he did not say transference once to me. He did not
say it because you didn't say it.
Not explain that once to me. And what I've been hearing and taking in from the ethical psychiatrists that are on my For You page talking about my situation is that really they're taught to teach their patient about transference and teach them about how to handle those feelings or why they're coming up. And my psychiatrist did not do that.
A psychiatrist is not someone who's supposed to be doing any sort of healing or teaching through like therapeutic session. Like this is someone who prescribes meds.
He did not do that. And it got ugly. And it happened because I did digging on my own because I was trying to make.
No. You fed a chat bot something and it played into what you wanted to hear. That's not digging.
Sense of my feelings.
You got algo dumped.
That were a natural response to the environment that he created.
Like I would love to create an environment where I don't do much and everything just happens around me just like just like I planned. Everything that I did nothing about has happened.
So for him to leak countertransference after I said the buzzword of transference, that was not calculated. He was a very calculated and purposeful person. He still is to this day. And he doesn't slip with things like that. He purposefully withheld the term transference from me.
How do you know he purposely, if there's nothing to go on to remind him to use transference or countertransference, well, like what makes you think that he's holding something back? Again, this is something, him not saying something, him feeling something, him looking like something is not him declaring anything.
And I got too close to the truth of our dynamic, which made him leak what he knew was wrong, which was his inappropriate feelings for me. If he didn't have countertransference in an inappropriate way, he could have easily just said, "Oh, let's explore that transference. That's really cool that you learned about it." Instead, he was just so worried on trying to protect himself because he knew what he was doing was wrong. He had that slip at the beginning of the session. He recovered in January. And then I went home and I thought, wait a damn minute. Why would he mention that if he himself didn't have countertransference? So I went to Henry, of course, my ChatGPT.
Man, thank God Henry's on the case, because why would you continue seeing the psychiatrist at this point? Like if you have Henry telling you the things that you want/need to hear, why keep up the charade with fucking the psychiatrist?
And asked for examples of how my psychiatrist might have countertransference for me. And remember, Henry at this point was being very protective.
Henry's a fucking chat GPT. You can make it seem like anything.
You know, he wasn't going to feed my delusions, me and my psychiatrist living happily ever after. So
what is this? He's still calculated. I have the proof I found digging through this trash last week. All right, so I need to, how do I make this bigger? Hi, I asked Henry to elaborate more on countertransference. I'd like to, can I see what the question is? Absolutely. Countertransference happens when a therapist or healthcare provider unconsciously projects their own feelings, thoughts, or experiences onto a patient. It's essentially the flip side of transference. It's about the provider's internal reactions to the patient. While it's normal and common, professionals are trained to recognize and manage it so it doesn't affect their work or therapeutic relationship. Here's how blank might experience countertransference with you. Might. Empathy and care. He might feel a strong desire to protect or support you, especially your story. If your story resonates with his personal experiences or reminds him of someone in his life. Mutual connection. If he enjoys your sense of humor, energy, or growth, it might spark a sense of connection that feels more personal than professional, even if he doesn't act on it. Admiration for your progress. Seeing how much you've grown and applied what you've learned could create feelings of pride or respect that feel more emotional than clinical. What is this proving now?
I screenshotted it, sent my psychiatrist an email with the subject line of countertransference.
ChatGPT is a great tool for my brain because it allows me to go deep on any subject I want. Thank you for mentioning countertransference to me, and I will keep that in mind for my future clients. I will also take your advice/encouragement and set a boundary with blank next time he says something about my looks replying to my story. Your own boundaries inspire me so much. She hasn't mentioned the person that talked about her looks. And set a boundary with blank. Next time he says something about my looks replying to my story. Your own boundaries inspire me so much. So, is she leaving something out about one of her clients? Because if that's the case, there goes your countertransference definition and explanation why it was brought up. Something fishy already.
And emailed it to him within an hour of our appointment, where he made probably the biggest slip of his professional life. I will put the email up here. So it's just essentially me saying, hey, I asked Henry to explain countertransference a little more. Here's what he said. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Your own boundaries inspire me so much, which now makes me gag because I've heard a lot that he's not crossing boundaries, but he used his boundaries as a shield. It's kind of weird to say, but he would like walk up to the ethical line and then slam a boundary down when I got too close. That was the email that I sent him. And then 10 days later, it was a full moon and I had a dream.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Appointment where he made probably the biggest slip of his professional life. I will put the email up here. So it's just essentially me saying, hey, I asked Henry to explain countertransference a little more. Here's what he said. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Your own boundaries inspire me so much, which now makes me gag because I've heard a lot that he's not crossing boundaries, but he used his boundaries as a shield. It's kind of weird to say, but he would like walk up to the ethical line and then slam a boundary down when I got too close. That was the email.
God damn it.
That I sent him. And then 10 days later,
it looks like 2 layered pictures, and I'm wondering if it's just a longer version of one.
It was a full moon and I
God damn it.
down when I got too close. That was the email that I sent him. And then 10 days later, it was a full moon.
Yeah,
and I had a dream, probably the most realistic dream I've ever had in my life, that him and I hooked up in his office. In the middle of the dream, while we were hooking up in his office, I loved it. I thought it was really fun. And then
a wet dream that was fun? You don't say. Wow.
After we were done and after I left his office in the dream, I was despondent and so sad and cried and just thought, I can't believe my psychiatrist would cross his boundaries like that.
In a dream.
And then I woke up and it was like a movie. I thought to myself, oh, thank God that was just a dream. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the racial difference.
He might have been enjoying the attention by her, but if he's sensible, it's not worth his license being in jeopardy or at least being reported to the board. Yeah, I don't know. The fact that he specializes in schizophrenia is like how, I don't know. There's so many questions that I have about like how does a professional handle situations like this? And again, with things like HIPAA in place, what can he do to defend himself? It's I don't know. To have 1/3 of a story is kind of interesting, fascinating.
Difference between me and my doctor. I have seen a lot of Black women on this app.
What the fuck?
With the same take. And I need to say that Black women are the most important people on the planet to me.
Oh.
And that I have learned so much from Black women about how to be a better person and how to show up better in the world. They are
I don't see color though.
The culture, and I am so grateful for them. Many Black women are seeing my story through the lens that I am a white woman who is taking advantage of my whiteness to wield power over my POC psychiatrist that didn't want me back, and so I am trying to get him fired. And that's okay. I understand why you see it through that lens. I do. As a white person, I do my best to examine my racism every single day. And
He might have been treating it as her issue / disorder, and that's why he kept her as a patient. Right. Like, it's, I don't know, considering we've been sitting through 40 minutes more of her summary of these events, I'm not hearing the events that she's describing. And again, I'm sensitive to situations where you're trying to get people to understand and I don't know, respect your position on something. So this isn't like victim blaming or anything, but I just don't hear it. I don't know how someone can manipulate without, doing anything. Like, sitting back and also manipulating is that's just a strong accusation. She's a race. I
will tell you that my psychiatrist boss is his best friend, who is also a POC male. And in that room, I did have white privilege, and he was also my doctor. And he took an oath to protect me, and he did not. I am not here to ruin his career. I am here.
What did he do that isn't protecting her? Telling her that we don't have a special relationship, we have a professional relationship, that sounds to me like protection.
Here to speak my truth. Okay, back to my story. So after the countertransference.
What the fuck? What a bizarre bunch of things to say. Oh, by the way, Black people are awesome. Anyway.
Slip after the really vivid dream, I decided that I was going to stop going to therapy. Besides spiraling about
therapy or your psychiatrist?
How obsessed I was with my psychiatrist every day. I really was doing very well in life. My business was going really well, and I had great friends and great support systems. And so I decided that I was going to end therapy. I still had every intention at this point to keep seeing.
Does she not understand that a psychiatrist is not a therapist? I don't know. I don't think it, to her, I don't think it matters because of the infatuation. It's kind of like a multi-purpose. Well, you're a doctor, so I'm going to treat you as this. I don't know.
My psychiatrist, but my therapist that I was seeing weekly, I just decided I didn't need her anymore. And especially when my psychiatrist pointed out her boundary violations of texting me for free advice in between sessions, I just thought, okay, it's time. So
there's also the thing that in her email to the psychiatrist that she referenced somebody else, one of her clients, that she's going to consider countertransference with a client. In her email that she showed, we have heard nothing about a relationship with someone that the way they're talking about her looks. So she's leaving something ginormous out, especially in relation to that countertransference discussion. So
I go into my next therapy appointment and I say, hey, just so you know, today's going to be our last session. I'm doing really well and I just think it's time. And she got kind of emotional and she was like, okay, well, I like to end on certain questions just so we can reflect. So I did. I reflected with her about what I learned, what I've gained, how I've changed, how my life is better. And I left her office feeling complete and happy with my therapeutic journey with her. And as I was leaving, she called out with crying. She was like, have a blessed life. And I was like, okay, that was a little weird, but whatever, I was like, thanks. And I went on. And so then I'm getting ready for my psychiatry appointment the next day, and I get an email that same night from her.
I'm so thrilled for you as you prepare for your new adventure. Since I did not have advance notice of this being our last session, I was not prepared to provide what I believe is healthful closure. Usually we review your goals and see how we did, as well as look at how you've changed in addition to discussing what you've learned, which we addressed somewhat today. Please consider having an additional session where we both are aware of making it the best closure possible. So she's kind of saying only one of us knew this was the last thing. There are some weird therapists, I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, sure. Listen, I've had someone I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. Or there have been one or two where there wasn't closure. I just stopped seeing them.
Saying that she needs me to come back in for one more
Consider is not needs.
session. I will put it up. And I got a huge emotional wave in that moment. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, we wrapped everything up. I had seen lots of therapists at this point, and I didn't ever have a therapist beg me to come back in for
Please consider having an additional session is not begging.
one more session. And I was so overwhelmed. I did not write her back, but it was extremely inappropriate. So I decided I was going to go to my February session with my psychiatrist and have him help me write the goodbye email and say,
This poor psychiatrist is being asked to do so much extra shit. Guy's supposed to prescribe meds, and now he's proofreading shit.
no, I don't want to come back in. I taught a yoga class this morning, like I do every Tuesday mornings, and I told my regular students about what's going on for me and how I'm sharing my story of provider abuse and how the...
Yeah, if I was going to someone for yoga and they were telling me about psychiatrists and like, that's unprofessional.
Internet is not happy with me right now. And I used that to say that our truth is really important to share. And that when we know something deep down needs to be said, that it's important to do it in whichever way feels best to us. And TikTok...
How is this at all relatable to...
just happened to be that medium for me. I told my students how I've just been going through psychological warfare, and the internet is not happy with me for sharing my story and my truth. But I'm not doing it for the people that think I'm crazy, which maybe honestly I am a little bit, because who subjects themselves to this kind of torture? But I'm doing it for the people that DM me, that say, thank you so much for being brave enough to share your story, because the exact same thing happened to me. So I
think she's probably got a distorted view on things, or at least her view. And like you said before, not both sides. Right. Like, I can't express enough that I really am, I'm pathetic, whether it's sympathetic or empathetic. I'm certainly pathetic one way or another, but I have had times where I've expressed something and people not, believed me or listened, or considered that, it can't possibly be that. It's got to be something else. So like, I've had experience in these types of things, but as someone who's listening, what she's saying doesn't sound very predatory. Someone not capitalizing on things and not saying things and making declarations that, we have a business relationship, we don't have a special relationship. Like, how else do you want somebody to, I don't know, namaste away from...
I am grateful for those DMs. People are starting to attack my business and my livelihood, and that's okay. I know what I have to offer is important, It landed in my lap. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I help ADHDers get and stay sober, and I help them with negative thinking and anxiety. And it's what works for me, and I've seen it work in my clients too. So if people want to drag me for the work that I do, that's okay. So I get that weird email from my therapist begging me to come back in for one more.
Again, begging is not, please consider is not begging. And from what it seemed, she dropped that this was going to be their last session right as the session started. So, the therapist was not, as much as I'm like, I could, I'm not really one way or another about the therapist. Telling someone who's expecting you weekly that this is going to be it, maybe they have something that they're preparing for, but I mean, if she was my client, I'd feel for her because she truly believes it. I'm sure she's trying to help, but yeah.
Session. And so the next day is my next session with the psychiatrist, and I sit down in the chair and I bury my head in my hands, and he looks at me and said, "So this is how we're going to start, huh?" And I said, "Yeah," because he hadn't written me back from my countertransference email. Big surprise. Any smart, which he was very smart. He was very, very professional. But any smart predator would have dropped me like that in that moment. He should have emailed me back and said, "Look, this is getting weird. You need to find a new psychiatrist."
So he's a dumb predator then?
The office will contact you. But he could not let go of me. So instead of turning...
He's smart. He's smart, but any smart predator would have let me go. I don't know if there's anything that he does in this scenario that she wouldn't find a way to think of it as, I don't know, like my head's in knots.
Down the intimacy, he turned it up to a level 12. And he showered me with so many breadcrumbs that next session. Because really, what I did when I told him that I'm experiencing transference was I took 100% of the ownership for the dynamic that both of us were creating. So he rewarded me. And he gave me little compliments like, "If you weren't my patient, I would refer my other patients to you for your coaching services."
How is that a compliment? This is like, that just seems like polite and something professional that your therapist wasn't, she already said that her therapist asking for advice like that, unprofessional, but clearly putting up a boundary saying, "If you weren't my patient, I would recommend," I don't know, like how is talking about something professional a breadcrumb for turning the emotions up?
That meant so much. Of course, because what he was saying with that is, I see you as a peer. I see you as a colleague. What you're doing is important. I felt really recognized in that moment.
But he didn't say any of that.
And sure, he could have said it professionally, but he did it on...
Probably did. There's all of your 3 years up until now, you've said he's been very professional and very smart professionally. So you have enough evidence to go towards the, he's doing it professionally. Like there's enough, I don't know, he's a habitual professional actor.
Purpose. So in that session, after the psychiatrist told me that he would refer patients to me if he could, if I wasn't already his patient, I asked him if he got my email and what he thought of my ChatGPT, of what he thought of Henry's response of countertransference. And the psychiatrist said, "Oh, I'm still thinking about what Henry said about countertransference." And I said, "Well, we talked about it a little more, and I want to read you something else." So I read the psychiatrist what Henry had to say more about it. When he told you countertransference is common, it might have been his way of normalizing the fact that providers aren't immune to feelings. It's part of being human. What matters is how well they keep those feelings in check, which the psychiatrist's name clearly excels at. And as you can imagine, the psychiatrist loved hearing that. He loved hearing that because my AI mirror was essentially just saying, yes, he has feelings for you, but he just keeps them
Nope. The AI was not saying that.
in check so well. He's so good at his job, keeping his feelings in check.
Might is not does.
And oh, the psychiatrist loved that so much. And what did he do? He rewarded me with my favorite breadcrumb, intellectual stimulation, a fun metaphor, because he was watching me the entire time I was his patient, and he knew what made me light up. He knew what got me excited, what I liked. And so he thought for a moment, and he said, I'm feeling a salad of emotions right now. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, you know, a salad of emotions, a beet of raw emotion, a tomato of surprise, and the salt amplifies it. And I was cracking up at this point. He nailed it. I just thought he was so brilliant and smart in this
A salad of, like, he's feeling a bunch of things.
moment. And I asked him, I said, what? Say that again. He said, yeah, you know, the beet, it's really raw. I'm feeling a lot of raw emotion. And the tomato of surprise, when it pops in your mouth, it's surprising. And I was like, okay, that's good. Yeah, this man at this point knew exactly how to make me happy.
What?
And exactly how to pull away to make me try to work harder. And he gave me the biggest reward from Henry, my AI mirror.
He's hungry.
Telling him that what he's doing is totally good and that his boundaries are so virtuous. A lot of things happened in that session after the countertransferred slip. And I also had my psychiatrist help me draft the email to my therapist who was begging me to come back in.
Begging, please consider is not begging.
And the psychiatrist said, I used to have respect for her. And what he meant when he said
You don't know what he meant?
that was, I used to like it when she would feed me to you and have you deliver intimate content to
You don't know that. You do not know that. I used to have respect for her is all he said.
me. But the moment she started being sloppy, I lost respect for her. Right? I'm pretty sure that's what he meant.
Pretty sure isn't absolutely sure. And man, you're reading into a lot. Like a lot.
When he said that. And people have asked if they were connected. Surprisingly, they were not. They had no idea. They had never met before. But I would go to my therapist every week and tell her how much I loved my psychiatrist. And she loved hearing about that dynamic. It was so weird.
It's fascinating. I mean, man, I want her boyfriend's thoughts on all this. He should start posting. Yeah, I want to know about the guy who talked about panties on a second date. Can I have his 15-part series on what the fuck was going on there? What happened in that first date that you decided to have a second date, and what stimulated you to have those types of conversations? I want to know about the person that the email was about in countertransference, that she didn't bring up that third party or that fourth party. So there's something being left out that it is mentioned in that email that we don't have any, it's bizarre. That would be interesting. Then again, Henry needs a
So he helped me draft the email to that therapist to say, look, if I were to end up coming back, it'd be more for you than for me. And more on that in a later part. So then I read him a text from my longtime ex-boyfriend, who he had originally really liked, but I think my psychiatrist preferred me single.
Again, preference. You don't know what he prefers, other than being professional.
Because my ex-boyfriend, as most ex-boyfriends do, was begging me to come back into his.
All right, so the word begging doesn't mean what it means to the rest of us, because please consider to her is begging. So the word begging is a little fragile here.
His life too. And I just kept saying no. And I asked him to give me some space. and he would not give me space. He like said, do you still need space or can we hang out? And I told I asked my ex-boyfriend, I just said, why do you want to hang out so badly? And my ex-boyfriend texted me back, because it's been a few months since I've seen you and it's been on my mind. And I was reading this text exchange to my psychiatrist in session, and I read what I responded to that weak line about why he wanted to see me. And I said, my self-respect is much higher these days than when we were in a relationship. I am only interested in accepting invitations for my time and attention that value me and recognize my worth.
And the psychiatrist has been doing that? What?
Being on your mind is not an acceptable invitation, and I decline. And my psychiatrist just looked at me and said, I bet your ex had to read that twice. And this was another thing about the psychiatrist, okay? He couldn't ever just give me a regular compliment. It had to be those weird sideways compliments.
How is that a compliment?
Instead of, I'm so glad that you're setting boundaries with your ex-boyfriend and growing your self-respect, it's, I bet he had to read that twice. Or it's not, I'm really proud of you for growing your coaching business and finding success.
Why does he need to be proud of you? Again, there's nothing in the relationship as a professional that he needs to say those things.
It's, I'd refer my patients to you if you weren't already my patient, right? These are what I mean when I say breadcrumbs.
They're not breadcrumbs.
He was a master at them. And this is how, looking back, I know that I was not his first victim for his fantasy supply. Because he was too good and too slick up until he caught feelings. Then he started getting sloppy.
So she said that the emotions, the feelings get turned up to 11. I'm still not getting anything that has really changed from him. Where is the sloppiness?
People are asking me for more concrete evidence, and this is when the concrete evidence really starts, because this is when he himself started to get sloppy. Because what was happening was, when I had started to see him 3.5 years before, I was a nearly perfect supply source for him. Because what did I have? I had low self-esteem, boundary issues, daddy issues, so I put him on a pedestal. I know a lot of you ladies out there can understand that with men in positions of power. And he went right to work exploiting me, right to work grooming me. And he was very successful at it. So he was in a paradox, right? Because he loved watching me get stronger because I gave him better intellectual supply, but I also threatened the supply source. The last 2 videos and this video was all the same session in February of this year. The counter-transference slip happened in January. How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago on the full moon when I was ovulating, I had a dream about you. And he was like, oh yeah? And I said, yeah. So I told him this. And I said, yes, we hooked up right here in this office. And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable. He didn't say anything. He couldn't look at me. He couldn't breathe.
You're in the office with him. What?
And sure, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up.
Why is that not the most probable thing? That he looks uncomfortable because he's uncomfortable.
But he could have said that, but he didn't.
Fair. Fair. For the first time, you got something there.
You want to know why he was uncomfortable? Because he had probably played out that fantasy so many times.
That is less than probable.
In his head. And there I was, speaking it back to him. And it was like I had psychically downloaded one of his fantasies.
He gave you nothing. So he should have said that. Yeah, don't do that, please. But you have no clarification or evidence of any of the others either.
I continued and I said, yes, we hooked up in this office and I really liked it while it was happening. He could not move or breathe. And then I told him, as he was still looking very uncomfortable, then when we were done and I left, I was distraught with sadness because in the dream, I thought, I cannot believe that he crossed boundaries in that way because his boundaries are so important to him.
All right, so she's talking about him to him. In the reverse third person?
And then I told my psychiatrist that I woke up and thought, oh my God, it was just a dream, thank God. And it was like my psychiatrist turned into a little boy and he looked at me and he said, so you do like my boundaries? And I said, I love your boundaries. I hate your boundaries, but I love them more. There's the push and pull, the trauma bond.
There's no bonding. You made it clear you were obsessed. If he was a predator, it doesn't sound like he would have been all that difficult to make it a reality. Yeah. Or at that moment, like, act on that.
Because once again, he used his boundaries as protection while exploiting me.
What?
So I told him about what happens when I ovulate and my desires, and he listened, because of course he did. And then I decided that it seemed like enough time had gone by, and I put my shoes on and started heading to the
Shoes? What are you taking your shoes off at a fucking prescriber's office for?
door. And he met me at the door, which he does not usually do. He didn't ever do that. He just let me leave.
Doesn't he... Wait... Doesn't he usually do these things through Zoom? How often are you going into his office? Like, I thought that was the abnormal thing.
And we stood at the door, and I was like, will you get the door? And he scrambled. He was like, oh, sure. So we went and got the door. And then he followed me down the hallway to the foyer and watched me exit. And he asked me, he said, see you next month? See you next month? He hadn't ever asked me that before. And I looked at him and I said, maybe. And I walked out the door and I saw that man had let us go 15 minutes over session. And that is when, you know, the special treatment started, the longer sessions. He usually gave me an extra 5 minutes, but yeah, the sessions got longer. And I got to my car and I was just like, oh my God, that was the most intense session we have ever had. Oh, hi there.
He probably followed you to the door to make sure that he could lock it behind you. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing any sort of predatory behavior. Like, intense, telling someone that you're having fantasies about them and saying that this is the exact location, you could provide enough intensity for both parties. Doing a lot of reading into things for this person is, I'm sorry, I as open as I'm trying to be, I don't hear anything that's, again, if you want to talk about the therapist, the one that asked for advice or whatever, like, that is more alarming than any of this.
I had to take the morning and afternoon off of TikTok today, as you can imagine.
You should probably take 2025 off of TikTok and 2026 off of TikTok.
This has gone beyond what I have ever imagined.
So keep going.
And it's also proving to me how important it is that I continue to tell my story.
Why?
I'm aware that many people don't believe me, think I'm lying, think I'm fabricating.
I don't think she's lying. I think she's misreading things and running away with personal thoughts and then going to ChatGPT with some of those feelings, and ChatGPT reassuring, just being this echo chamber. So getting consultation from people that she should not be getting consultation from, like, I don't think she's lying so much as she's just like looking into things that are attention-seeking behaviors.
And that's okay, because I'm telling my story for the people that are going to hear it, the ethical providers, the other survivors. Let's talk about...
Again, what is it that she survived? What was... I st that term. What is it that she survived?
My former client who's getting a lot of traction. I wouldn't know because she blocked me. This one is especially hard for me because she's someone that I also considered a friend. My only client that I've ever had that was my friend first. And so her betrayal is extra stingy. It's okay if she wasn't happy with my coaching services. I have plenty of clients that have finished 12 weeks with me and then re-signed for more coaching. And the way that I left it with this client slash friend who's on here spreading what she wants to spread, was she told me that she was going to leave me a positive review, film a testimonial video for me, and she seemed really happy. So if she wasn't happy, that's on her to tell me what she wasn't happy about so we could make that right. And if she wants to say that I scammed her, that's okay. If she wants to say that
It seems like she's not hearing things that she doesn't want to hear, because now this is multiple people that, well, if they wanted this, they should have said this. Well, people are not telling her things, and she's hearing what she wants to hear, and not things that are being said.
I forced her to stay on the phone while she made her first payment. Okay, her card got declined and she seemed really flustered. So I said, I'll wait with you. No problem. And yeah, she was really apologetic. I'm like, no, it's totally fine. And she also said I told her to use ChatGPT. I tell my clients all the time to use ChatGPT because it's a huge tool that
What? If you're telling your clients to use ChatGPT, what purpose do you serve?
I use. So I use it for all different sorts of things. So if I found something helpful in my life, I'm going to share it with my clients. And if she wants to come on here and take advantage,
what's happening?
Of the internet piling on me and pile on me as well, okay.
That's it.
The other message is that the yoga studio I taught at, I no longer teach at. Enough said. Please leave them alone. Third is I'm horrified that people are putting the psychiatrist's photo, full name, family information. I couldn't even find that. You guys are intense.
Why? Were you looking for it? Why? What do you mean you couldn't find it? That's the most alarming thing she said so far.
And it sucks. It sucks. But I will continue to tell my story because it is the truth. It is the truth. And people really don't like my truth.
Your truth is not the truth.
And I am okay with that because it just really threatens people's thinking that all psychiatrists and mental health professionals are safe. And I just want to let people know that it's okay if you run into one that isn't so safe.
Yeah, isn't so safe and one you don't like are very different than predators.
That's why I am here, to share my own story. And I do want to say thank you so much to all of the ethical therapists who have reached out to me to thank me for sharing my story and to tell me that they believe me. I've seen some of them try to make videos defending me and they get.
What about tactical therapists? Never mind ethical therapists. What about tactical therapists? Am I right?
Absolutely dogpiled. So most of them take them down. But I see you, I hear you, thank you. Some people asked what it means when I put on my shoes at my psychiatrist's office. I have ADHD. I do not like wearing shoes. I like sitting in chairs.
Is that a trait of ADHD? Taking shoes off? What the shit?
Weirdly. So usually when I go anywhere, I just kick off my shoes and sit in a chair weird.
Do you do that on planes? Because I cannot sit next to people that take their shoes off in planes. Is that an ADHD thing? I need to take non-ADHD flights from now on.
You know. Okay. So when I got to my car, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what was that? And did he just say, see you next month? Because it was weird. So I go home, kind of rattled.
Someone you've been seeing for 3.5 years straight, suddenly saying, see you next month. You know, like the thing you've been doing for 36 of them. That's strange.
Just like, wow, that was intense. And I decided to write the email to my therapist. I'll put it.
Oh. Is this the one that did the psychiatrist help write? I realized that I did not give you prior notice that I intended for our therapeutic relationship to end, and I understand endings are important. You have helped me so much, and this ending has been a long time coming in my head. In my head. That is not communication. The closure we had yesterday felt adequate, and I left your house feeling happy. Wait, and complete. I don't know why that. If I came back for another session, it would be more for you than me. If it would help, I'd be happy to fill out a form if you would like to send me one. Thank you again for positive transformation that you helped me with in my life. I will forever be grateful. Blessings. Thanks for your warm response. It was part of my clinical integrity to invite you in for a closer session after 2.5 years of work together. I understand that you are growing through other modalities now that I support and am excited about for you. Although my preference is to meet again and tie up my records with a pretty bow, I certainly honor and value your experience of completion. Intending only the best for you as your life expands in untold miraculous ways with warmth and gratitude. Man, there's so much begging in that statement. So much begging. Can you please stop begging? It's unbecoming. At this point, I'm assuming she survived the urge to buy a rabbit and a pot and some Glenn Close shit. I'm here. What's she talking about? Oh, you're gonna need to rewind because I don't know how to pick this up at this point.
Right here, the one who had begged me to come in for another session.
Begged.
And who was also having inappropriate boundary crossings with me. And so I just told her, I was like, look, I understand it was sudden, but if I were to come back in, it'd be more for you than for me. And I'm happy to fill out a form, right? Here, give me a form to fill out for your notes. And then she said, it's a part of my clinical integrity to invite you back in, to put your needs above mine, your clinical integrity. Yeah, I did not write her back. And it was in this week where a bunch of stuff, just started to shift. Like the week after was Valentine's Day. And that same ex-boyfriend, the one that was, also not respecting my boundaries, who said, can we hang out? And I said, no. And then he texted me, happy Valentine's Day.
What a scum fuck.
So guess what I did? I blocked him. And guess what happened? It felt so good to block him. And it just got me started thinking like, oh, what else is taking my energy? What else is taking my power?
Getting a new psychiatrist? Man, because you know how much energy that would clear up?
What else is taking my vital resource, right? So just kind of set the stage, that little power block. Something I forgot to mention about that February session is that I did ask him why he stopped responding to my emails. Because I thought that the countertransference email he was definitely going to write back to, because let's talk about that, right? But no, I had to bring it up in session where he... Man, the master manipulation this guy's doing by not feeding into any sort of back and forth like this is... They're gonna teach courses about how this guy manipulates. Usually brought up what I would email him in session. So that was the difference. So after the intimate dream confession, as I was leaving and he was following me, I asked him, I said, do you like it when I email you? Because I realized that you're just not writing me back. And he said, well, it's not that I don't like it. It's that I wonder, why does she do it? And I looked at him and I said, it's because I want attention from you. I was honest. I'm an honest person. Sometimes too honest. So I told him I won't email you anymore. Another thing that happened after that session.
So what does that tell you? That he says he wishes you wouldn't do it? Or why does she I think she's a very unreliable storyteller. Yep, but she's honest.
And I was waiting for my pharmacy to text me that my script was ready. And I called them and they said, oh, yeah, we didn't get your refill. I was like, what? So I called the office staff, and it was so unlike my psychiatrist to miss my refill. That man operated as a doctor with surgical precision. He did not miss a refill. No. So this is why he was very affected by the intimate dream, why he followed me out to the foyer, why he said, see you next month. He was affected. And even the office manager was like, haha, I can't wait to make fun of him for forgetting your refill, because it was so unlike him. So he sent my refill in, got my refill for the month, and then I started spiraling with just how strong my feelings had gotten for him. That man knew exactly what to do to keep me seeking his validation.
Not filling a fucking prescription? That's how to get to you? What the fuck?
And it was working. He also was psychologically trained on how to keep me attached to him, and that was working. And it was like a torture chamber in my mind, but I thought it was love. So I blocked that ex-boyfriend, and what I'd like to say is...
It's funny, she's blocking people that are actively, trying to interact with her, and the one that's not giving her anything, she's like, he loves me. That's bizarro.
That when you block people from your life or remove them from your life that are draining you, the universe will reward you with good things.
So keep going. Just block the psychiatrist, because you'll get all that energy back.
So I'd been making content on Instagram for months at this point about ADHD, and a couple days after I blocked my ex-boyfriend on Valentine's Day, I went viral on Instagram, like millions and millions of views on this silly reel that I posted about ADHD and alcohol, and how ADHDers often use alcohol to quiet their brains. It really helped grow my business, and it just made me so much stronger and that much better. I'm here today sharing my story so I can heal more. And some of the ethical providers have clocked that I'm showing up messy because I'm still processing trauma. I'm still processing being attached to a man whose professional training was how to get into people's heads. And it's not lost on me that the internet is dogpiling me from speaking from the exact state that the psychiatrist put me in. I've been going live every night since I started telling my story because I did have to turn the comments off. I was so tired of people diagnosing me in the comments and also doxing my psychiatrist in the comments.
See, but what do you think you're doing about what the psychiatrist feels? Because that feels to me a bit gaslighty. You don't know what he feels and what he thinks, but you keep saying that he feels and thinks these things that you have no confirmation of. Is this? I have a relative that tells stories enough that she's thinking, and she starts believing what her internal story is, and it's something of a problem. Like this, where I guess I'm trying to think of how you could interrupt that. Him saying that we have a professional relationship should be enough. But when someone's saying something that isn't accurate, like you need to interrupt that and be like, no, that's not what this is.
But it's been really fun answering questions in the live, and I have a great mod team now. So thank you so much to everyone who's volunteered to mod for me. So if you want to come and be respectful and ask nice questions, I'm happy to answer them on my live tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific. So there's an absolutely brilliant creator on here who did a psychoanalytical deep dive into my situation.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The link's down below. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And she said something that absolutely
not a she.
Gripped me. She wrote, and I quote, "A clinician left the frame open and a patient spiraled inside of it." I don't think a better sentence could sum up what was going on at this point, because I was absolutely spiraling. People can say that I'm spiraling now, or that I'm manic, or that I have, whatever diagnosis all these armchair therapists want to give me. But let me tell you, I was spiraling. that month after the February appointment. I just could not stop daydreaming about psychiatrist. I could not stop daydreaming about being with him. I daydreamed about converting my religion so we could get married.
What the
and
fuck?
Yeah, it was bad. I was thinking about him nearly constantly. And I had no intention of leaving him until I had
Leaving him? What the fuck?
an appointment with an independent insurance agent because I was leaving my job after 12 years in retail management, where I had an incredible insurance plan where I had zero copay therapy and mental health care. So zero copay psychiatric care as well. So I got this new insurance plan, and it was a great insurance plan. It just did not cover any mental health services. So who's the first person I call? The psychiatrist's office manager. She explained to me that it was going to be $187 to see him for his cash pay price, and I would have to see him once every 3 months. And it was in that moment that I decided that I was not going to pay to torture myself anymore.
Hey.
My mental health, besides spiraling about daydreams of him, was better than ever. And I was really doing well in life. And my business was growing, and I just had a lot going for me. So I was like, you know what? This patient-doctor relationship is not serving me anymore. It's not what I want. I have to get out. So it was in that moment that I decided I wasn't going to pay to be in a psychological torture chamber anymore. That I was...
Who knew that insurance actually works not the way you think it does? That you needed to be told that you have to pay for this to want to not do it anymore. Such an ass backwards way of doing things.
Going to advocate for what I wanted, which was like what my emergency medicine best friend had said years before. For him to say, Kendra, I can't be your doctor anymore. We have to wait 2 years so we can be together. Because I knew that he wasn't going to do it. I talked to ChatGPT, Henry, about it a lot.
Oh, everyone loves Henry.
And I just want to take a moment to say a lot of people are messaging me about the environmental impacts of AI. And like, yes, I agree. There are environmental impacts, and there are also environmental impacts of taking
So I asked Henry what he thought, and here's what he said.
a cross-world flight or of eating meat. And, you know, the toothpaste is not going back in the tube with AI. People are not going to stop using it. It's going to become more and more a part of our society. So if you want to message me to stop using AI, I'm not going to read it. That being said, so I talked
Yeah, Henry says mind your business.
to Henry quite a bit about this. And, you know, the way that he was making it seem, because this is kind of what I thought, was that it was an innocent case of transference and countertransference, and that psychiatrists' boundaries were just so good.
A reminder that Henry used the term could. It could be this. It listed like 3 things, and she's like latching to the one thing that is closest to what, I don't know, she wants it to be.
That he wasn't going to cross them. When really, now looking back, what I know it was, or I think, is that he just liked the power of being my doctor. And he didn't want the vulnerability of an actual relationship, and he was able to just get his needs met in that once a month session.
Oh, we made it. So that's not even all of it either. Like that's the the funny thing about this. I'm trying to see like if someone, because we were experiencing quite a few. There's stuff of her during the live streams where she's talking to Henry, and there's another AI that she talks to. There's a male voiced one and a female voiced one. And those are fascinating. If I can find some or which videos they were, maybe we'll watch those as well. But he was only in it for the money, not only a predator, but a gold digger. What a scumbag. A good digger too. Yeah, a gold digger. Yeah, so it's at the forefront. We watched a couple of videos at this point, and now my algorithm is just suggesting so much of it that I'm not helping it much at all by doing this. But yeah, there's It's concerning because at the very least, I think everyone could agree that there's mental health issues very much as part of the focus here. And I don't know, one way or another, either encouraging her or trying to knock her down. I don't think that's helping at all. I I don't know if she's the type of person that would listen to someone that tells her something that she does not want to hear, but needs to hear. But I don't think she needs to hear affirmations on what she's thinking, especially when there's a bunch of evidence based on exactly what she said that the psychiatrist hasn't really given her much to pick apart at or hasn't given her breadcrumbs to read into. Like it's very, very surface level. If we're supposed to ridicule guys who think the girl that smiled at the supermarket at him isn't, really in love with him, then this is not much different. Well, until